The New Golden Age, issue 1, Geoff Johns writing, and there's like 20
Numerous.
artists.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of artists credited on this book.
Well, and I feel like too they added all of the art in the back half of it, which is a lot of like what is it? Secret file pages.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like those are a lot of different artists as well, because the art's pretty consistent throughout this. So, because I was looking for breaks, like, you know, when they go to different time streams or whatever we're calling them, you can tell the art change. But other than that, it's all fairly consistent. So,
Just for the record, here's a list of the artists. Diego Olorterga and JP Mayer are together, and then you got Scott Hanna, Jerry Ordway, Steve Lieber, Todd Nuck, Scott Collins, Victor Bogdanovich, Brandon Peterson, and Gary Frank. So yeah, very good. That's a lot of names. That's a lot of names. So this is a kind of a wild book. This is doing it. So I'm not entirely sure. Like, is this set in continuity before things changed? Is this set in an alternate Earth kind of thing? It's a bit unclear right now. Obviously, you've got a little bit of you know, what do we call it? Doomsday Clock.
Yep, there's a little Doomsday Clock, a little bit of Flashpoint Beyond.
Yeah.
In here. So, and a lot of Justice Society from different interpretations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the main thing in the book. It's basically going through these different time periods, and it jumps around a lot. I actually have an article up from Newsarama that sort of puts them in order, just in case we want to look at that. But we start off with young Helena Wayne, which is about 10 years in the future. And she talks about this red-headed, or ginger menace, I should say. This villain who, like, sometimes she sees in the corner of her eye that is kind of creepy and freaks her out, and she wants rid of him. And then as the story goes on, we get these different slices of time from the JSA history, and some of it's about Dr. Fate kind of seeing some of the future, and how this ginger character seems to be going through time backwards and killing every iteration of the JSA, always starting with Dr. Fate. So that's a summary of the whole thing, because it's hard to kind of like tease it out the way the book does in conversation. So that's just me kind of, that's kind of where we get to by the end. That's what this character's doing. So it's this,
and here,
this is the big threat, you know?
Yeah, he reminds me of a younger Per Degaton, who's an old school Justice Society. So I'm sure there'll be relations to there, because it feels like the one thing I can count on when Johns tackles the Justice Society is it's always about legacy, and it's always the younger heroes working with the older heroes. And we get that a lot here. And then the fact that we know this is about the missing 13, you know, these 13 characters we've never heard of before. And they all seem to be sidekick / legacy characters. You know, it would not surprise me if that's who this Ginger Menace ends up being, is someone, you know, it's kind of a legacy that's trying to do what their predecessor couldn't do, and that's to destroy the Justice Society, especially with timey-wimey shenanigans.
Yeah, the other part of this is you've got the Time Masters going back through time. It seems like they have fixed time and brought the JSA back, which might mean that that's in the regular continuity that they've brought them back, but they're acknowledging that there's these 13 sidekicks are missing. Like, they've not quite succeeded in bringing everyone back that they intended to. So that's something that's kind of teased throughout the book as well. So this is one of these weird things where it does remind me a little bit of a Doomsday Clock issue in the way it's jumping around, and the way it's like hinting at a lot of big things that, you know, the JSA ongoing seems like it's going to be tackling, which is cool. But you've obviously got Helena Wayne as a prominent character kind of in the later part of the timeline. You've got the classic JSA in the 40s. You've got these new legacy characters in the future, some of them very far in the future. I think it was the year 3000 something. So you've got all of this going on, and the book's jumping around, and it does flow quite well. Like, it reads quite well when you're reading it. It's just hard to talk about it when it's jumping around all this time so much.
Yeah.
So, Yes, so that's the broad strokes of it. So I mean, looking at some of these scenes here, you got Helena away at the start. She makes a snow angel and it looks like a bat, and then the other kid says a cat. Yeah. So very very smart. And what we get her later is that like Selena is mad because Helena thinks there's an intruder in the house and it's actually just Batman coming home, and she ends up stabbing Batman, and this is how she learns that her father's Batman, and he shows her the Batcave. But this pisses off Selena because she's like, no, you promised our kid would never be a Robin, that she would never put on a cape, and this is now she knows it's going to happen, it's going to lead to that. And we see all the Robin costumes of the past.
The Hall of Fallen Robins.
And it sounds like they've all died for the way that they talk about this.
which wouldn't surprise me if this is all Earth 2 stuff because of the JSA, right? And that I had remember reading the Robinson version back in the day, and this was the Helena becoming Huntress because Selena forbid it, So she's like, well, I'm not Batwoman. I'm not the new Bat. I'm my own thing. And I forget how Batman had died there for her to do it. But yeah, I just seen that Hall of Robins really cracked me up. And like, yeah, no, Selena's right. Keep your kid out of a red and yellow costume, please.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's pretty good stuff. The general idea that to switch over to Dr. Fate stuff is that at one point we get the present day stuff with Khalid, who's kind of like learning to be the new Dr. Fate, and he has this vision of the year 3000 Dr. Fate being killed, which we saw earlier in the book, and he misinterprets it and says, I think I saw myself die, and he didn't. He saw another Dr. Fate die. I mean, he should still be scared because this guy's still coming for him, but it's interesting to sort of like notice his mistake and sort of understand it as the audience. I think that's quite smart. Because it makes us feel like we're like, it's an understandable thing that he gets wrong, but we kind of like get a bit of insight to it, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, because he doesn't know it's 1,000 years in the future.
Yeah. He just sees.
He's just seeing the death of a fate, or the death of fate. Maybe that's another thing here in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Yeah, so it seems like the story in the 40s, we're going to see how these original missing characters, or at least some of them, how they fit into the story, because one of them is the Red Lantern, who's the Soviet, like, Golden Age villain.
I love that. That's what you can always count on the Golden Age, is that there's always going to be a Soviet counterpart to our,
what I like about it is that obviously, like, Golden Age Green Lantern's very separate from Green Lantern Corps and all these other Green Lantern concepts. I like the idea that there's a Red Lantern for back then, but it's got nothing to do with a Red Lantern Corps or Atrocitus or anything like that. This is the Soviet Lantern.
He's red, He's red because he's a Soviet.
Yes.
It's like Rocket Red. And he looks just like in the backup section. He looks a lot like his costume looks a lot like Alan's.
Oh yeah,
in that type of way.
In fact, that's the couple of pages where it's like the guy's looking at the news, but it's like Alan is talking to someone and they're looking at the newspaper, and it's bringing this up. It's at the end of that scene where you see the mysterious villain who's kind of watching. He like steps on like a time pad or something and seems to go into the a little bit further ahead where he's in the 50s, and the JSA are at this hearing because they're the government are trying to get them to unmask for reasons.
Which is the people versus the Justice Society, which is like a famous story.
Oh,
so
now you mentioned that, you're right. But there's a moment later on. Is this where Dr. Fate in the 70s is getting checked because he's had another like vision like he did in the 40s? There's like a casual reference to something that happened earlier that week, and there's an editor's note saying, in so and so issue. Like I was like, okay, John, you're just flexing. You're just flexing that you can reference this event from a comic issue from the 1970s.
And you know what? When I used to read back in the day before we had the internet, I appreciated him bringing that knowledge, because then I would know I could check out All Star Comics 61 to see a building fall on top of Dr. Fate.
Joe, what's so funny about these missing 13 characters is that I think they had to point out that these were new characters, because the way Johns pulls from DC history, I could have totally believed that they were all real, and I just didn't know who they were.
I'm not going to be surprised if some of them do have real counterparts.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That for whatever reason, they're just doing this version of them. But someone like the Mr. Terrific sidekick, I fully would have believed that was a character from back in the day. It's kind of like the Sentry that way, where for the longest time, I believe they really found these old Marvel documents of a lost hero from the 60s. And it ought to come out, that was all a hoax meant to sell comics, you know?
Yeah.
But here, I mean, it shows what his knowledge of the DC universe is like, that he could make them feel like, you know, they are from that era.
Yeah, and we see Dr. Fate about 13 years ago from now, him running into Catwoman and having another one of his visions, which we actually get a name for the villain here. It's not a name, but like something to call him. He calls him the Stranger, so I guess that's what we'll call him now, rather than the Ginger Menace, even though I think Ginger Menace has a ring to it.
I think so too.
Yeah, but the Ginger Stranger. But he says to Catwoman, "Oh, like I saw the stranger's going to kill your daughter," and she's like, "I'm not going to have a daughter. I'm Catwoman, you know."
I'm not one for kids.
Yeah. Which I actually loved that after that page, when you turn the page, you go straight to Helena in the Batcave, which is a nice kind of transition and an omen.
Yeah. With also the snow globe, which reminded me of Flashpoint Beyond.
Oh, of course,
right? Yeah. So snow globe's there. So
and it's the very next page you see Corky from who was in Flashpoint Beyond a lot at the ends of the books,
talking to John Wilkes Booth, telling him that he's going to assassinate a president one day. Which that's super bold. You don't want to do that.
Well, obviously he's trying to talk him out of doing it, but it sounds like he's convinced him to do it because the guy's like, "Oh, everyone will know my name."
Yep.
Oh, that sounds great. It's almost like he's inadvertently caused it. So, you know, good fun stuff. But yeah, there's some little teases here that I, you know, like they're kind of disconnected from everything else. It's right after they're arguing in the time bubble, but you see Mime and Marionette from Doomsday Clock, and it looks like someone's looking for their kid, right? Maybe it's a stranger who's looking for their kid. Right. And then the sort of the girl who's replaced Ozymandias, and then we see the Dr. Manhattan symbol on, I presume Sally's head, or possibly their kid's head.
Yeah, I'm not sure because it's someone that has a lot of hair.
Yeah.
So it's not the baby.
It's a lot of teases. There's a lot of teases here.
I didn't realize this until just now, but Mime is painting without a roller. So which again, good on the art for pulling that together.
That's such a subtle thing. You could easily miss that. You could easily miss that.
But yeah, you look and he's, you know, Marionette's painting the nursery. Yeah. He has his hands empty, but he's holding something, which, And
obviously this is the Gary Frank page.
Yep.
Surprising no one. Yeah. And
which I'm glad they're choosing to pay off some elements of Doomsday Clock, even though I would also be fine with them never touching it again. You know,
I think they get away with it here because the Time Masters are going through and fixing the timeline. It's just almost like it doesn't matter because ultimately it's going to be fixed into the timeline anyway. And another big thing in the future, of course, is that Batman is killed and the police come to tell Selina. And we have some old age versions of some of the JSA, you know, to comfort her, which is the final page. And Helena's like, you know, someone murdered my father and I'm going to find him. I'm going to throw him off a goddamn building because I'm the goddamn huntress. So there's like to be continued in JSA issue 1, which is, I mean, I was excited for a John's ongoing. I'm definitely excited after this because this was such a tantalizing tease of like a lot of different stuff that he's playing with. I know Connor was a bit down on the idea of like it being John's again, and I get why he said that, but this feels like he's doing JSA in the style that he did Doomsday Clock, which I think is intriguing to me.
Yeah, I feel like John's shifting ever so slightly from, hey, this is the secret history of the DCU, right? Where he's pulling stuff from actual continuity, from stuff like, you know, Alan Moore had done Green Lantern Corps, or stuff from The Flash from back in the day. This feels more like, yes, this is the secret history in quotes of the JSA, but it's all new stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they're not these big retcons because it feels just like they're going to massage the time stream back and he's just going to be able to tell this almost self-contained story And I'm excited for that because it's been a while since, we all love Doomsday Clock, right? And it's felt like that was forever ago. So I'm here for more of this type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is not to say that I feel as strongly on this as I did issue 1 of Doomsday Clock, but I definitely was getting some of those vibes from some of the things that it was doing. And certainly this jumping around the timeline, and it's not quite doing Dr. Manhattan, even though there's a reference to Dr. Manhattan in it, but it does kind of have a similar feel, the way you're jumping around back and forth and building some of the narrative out of things. So but yeah, we come out of this with obviously Huntress wanting to avenge her father. We come out of this with the missing 13, and we come out of this with the Stranger going back through time, killing the JSA. And I'm sure they're all connected in the end, but those seem like the 3 separate plots that we're kind of following get into issue 1 of JSA, which is cool. Obviously, it's the art throughout is very, very good. There's a lot of good artists in this book. It's weird to judge overall because it is jumping around so much. It feels relatively justified as it does it because it's jumping into different timelines, different parts of the continuity with very different characters. Having Frank on the Doomsday Clock reference page makes a lot of sense. So it's a really hard book to judge art-wise because of that. But I can't remember very many pages that I didn't like. Like, most pages had someone of quality doing the art,
Yeah.
So it's tough to say. There's a lot of nice pages in here. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, and I like how each of the different times are distinct too. Like, you're not, you're in a different setting from just the way the art shifts.
Yeah, because you only get the caption within the year the first time you go to that time period. Yep. When it goes back to some of them a second time or a third time even, it doesn't give you the caption again. So you just get it from the context and the art from, this is continuing the young Helena story in 13 years' time. This is continuing, the present day stuff or whatever it is. You get it from the art, which is good. So I will say this though, I did feel the upgrade in writing from going from like John's with probably doing the story but 2 other writers scripting it from Flashpoint Beyond to this, which is just John's doing it all, and it felt stronger because of that.
Yeah. Well, it makes me wonder if, because of all the Time Master stuff, if he actually did write that, because the Time Master's voice seemed to match from Flashpoint Beyond. So, not to take away from the other 2, from Sheridan and
Adams.
Maybe they're just really good at that too, but that seemed to be consistent across the way. So, but yeah, no, I'm excited for this. This is exactly my type of jam when it comes to comics. This is why I got into comics originally. It's because of John's. I started reading on basically a weekly basis. So yeah.
Yeah. So just to briefly touch on this before we rate the book, there is some secret file style pages at the back of the missing 13 characters. So there's an Aquaman who it says full name unknown, brief alias as Adam Waterman.
Very golden age.
Yes.
Very golden age.
Definitely.
Also in the art, there is him throwing what looks like a polar bear at hunters, and that cracks me up.
I see that, yes. Very good. Also, I'm not sure if he comes from Atlantis, or there's a history here that I could read, but I haven't read it. There's in the art, there's like a scientist, and like then this Aquaman's like strapped to a chair, almost as if this is how he got his powers. So I don't know if that's true. People who have read all of this could tell me. Next up, we got Betsy Ross and Molly Pitcher, who are baseball themed too.
American history themed.
Okay.
Betsy Ross sewed, legend has it, sewed the first flag of the United States, and then Molly Pitcher was a woman that was bringing out water that ended up manning a cannon during the Revolutionary War. So these 2, I did read this one. These 2 were sidekicks to Miss America, who seems like a lost character in and of herself. But yeah, they had both gotten not magic, but legendary artifacts from the Revolutionary War that gives them powers. And it says they vanished the day after World War II ended.
Interesting. Then we got Cherry Bomb.
Who's a human bomb sidekick from the Freedom Fighters.
Got kind of like a bomb disposal like safety suit is effectively her costume. So yeah, okay. And then we got the Harley Quinn's son.
Yep. Who's as I was reading earlier, is Alan Scott Green Lantern had a villain named Harley Quinn. This is apparently her son. And he fought Infinity Inc., which is Jade and Obsidian's team of, that legacy characters of the Justice Society. So yeah.
Then we got John Henry Jr., obviously Steele's son, which is easy to get from context, but he has a very different outfit. He's got like just like a black hood, but then he's just got like dungarees on, and he's holding the hammer.
Yeah, he looks like Hooded Justice too from The Watchmen, which I think is interesting considering this ties into Doomsday Clock. But also, it says here his first appearance was in the New Frontier 6, which was the what's his name? Darwin Cook, which is his take on all the Silver Age stuff. So interesting here. But yeah, so we'll see where he plays in to here, because it's seeming like Ordway is doing half of them and then Nock is doing the other.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if some are going to show up in Stargirl and some are going to show up in Justice Society.
Very possible. Then we got the Boom, which is Judy Garrick. So so this is the daughter of Jay and Joan, which traditionally they didn't have kids. Right?
They couldn't have kids, which is why they were raising Bart as their own, basically.
And it is teased in this issue, actually, because back in the start when the JSA are having their photograph taken, they're getting Fate to kind of like tell some of their futures, and Garrick asks, "Oh, how many kids are me and Joan going to have?" And they get interrupted because Fate has his vision at the end, but it's kind of like teasing that there was about to be an answer. So that was a tease for that. Then we got Ladybug.
Yeah, this is another Nock one. So I'm wondering if a lot of these younger heroes are going to show up with Stargirl.
Yeah, so it seems like she's connected to Red Bee.
Yep.
Then we got Legionnaire, who's blacked out, and everything's all blacked out as if it's redacted, so you can't read anything.
But also red. So I'm wondering if this is the Stranger.
This could be the Stranger. Yeah, and it does seem like he has time travel tech and.
Yep. The Legion ring.
I would say that the hair looks like the right length based on this blacked out photo. Then we got a Mr. Miracle. This is Thaddeus Brown. Yep.
Who was Shiloh Norman, the other Mr. Miracle. That was his mentor. He also mentored Scott Free when Scott Free came to Earth. So I do like that Johns is going through and making Thaddeus Brown the first Mr. Miracle. Or the Golden Age Mr. Miracle, if you will.
Yeah, that's neat. Then we got Quiz Kid.
And this is the one that I would have believed just existed, but this is Mr. Terrific's sidekick. So, Smartest Boy in the World by Mr. Terrific.
Interesting. Then we got Salem the Witch Girl, who I think was referenced in this issue as well. Someone talked about a girl and thinking her name was Salem. Or thinking she's from Salem, which I think was them messing up.
Seems like a counterpart to Clarion the Witch Boy.
There you go. And then Red Lantern, I think, rounds them out. Yep, he does. Yeah. Which obviously we mentioned is the Soviet equivalent of Green Lantern. Yeah. Very similar outfit, though. But he's got a beard.
He's got a beard, and his cape is red with what looks like a black tunic. So, yeah. Just very much what I would expect from a Golden Age Red Lantern character.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
It was fun looking through all these, even if I didn't bother reading all the history descriptions. It was just nice to like get a sense of them all and look at them all, because they're going to be a big deal going forward by the sounds of it and the main story. So curious to see how that shapes up. All right, Matt, what are you giving the Golden Age issue 1?
I'm gonna give this an 8.
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to agree with that. And I think I'm intrigued by what it's setting up. It's nice to have a Geoff Johns comic again. It's a very obviously mixed bag of art, but the art's generally quite good. So, but yeah, but it's not a complete knockout of the park either.
No.
You know, so yeah, I think 8 out of 10's quite fair.
Okay.